Question 1. Quality control measures reveal that a new resident in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, is seeking information about preparing for their driver's license knowledge test and is asking a colleague for advice on the best way to study. Considering the regulatory framework for driver licensing in the Northwest Territories, which of the following approaches represents the most professional and legally compliant method for the colleague to respond? Option A. Share personal notes and summaries of what the colleague remembers from their own driver's test several years ago, suggesting these are the most important topics. Option B. Offer to provide informal coaching sessions, focusing on common trick questions and strategies to guess the correct answers on the test. Option C. Advise the new resident to visit the official website of the Northwest Territories Department of Infrastructure or visit a licensing office to obtain the official driver's handbook and information on testing procedures. Option D. Recommend that the new resident join unofficial online forums or social media groups dedicated to driver's tests in the Northwest Territories for study tips. Correct answer is C. Advise the new resident to visit the official website of the Northwest Territories Department of Infrastructure or visit a licensing office to obtain the official driver's handbook and information on testing procedures. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the paramount importance of adhering to the Northwest Territories' specific traffic laws and the ethical obligation to ensure all drivers are adequately prepared and licensed. Misjudging the urgency or the legal requirements could lead to unsafe road conditions or legal repercussions for both the individual seeking the information and the person providing it. Careful judgment is required to navigate the legal framework while offering assistance. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves directing the individual to the official resources provided by the Northwest Territories Department of Infrastructure. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the regulatory framework governing driver licensing and information dissemination in the Northwest Territories. The Department of Infrastructure is the sole authority responsible for providing accurate, up-to-date information on licensing requirements, road rules, and testing procedures. Relying on official sources ensures the individual receives legally sound and comprehensive guidance, preventing potential misunderstandings or violations of the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicle Act and associated regulations. This upholds the integrity of the licensing process and promotes road safety. Incorrect approaches analysis. Providing a summary of personal knowledge about the test content without verifying its current accuracy or official status is an incorrect approach. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement of providing information from an authorized source and risks disseminating outdated or incomplete information, which could lead the individual to be unprepared for the actual test, potentially failing it or worse. Operating a vehicle without full comprehension of current laws. Suggesting the individual bypass official channels and rely on informal study groups or unofficial online forums is also an incorrect approach. This circumvents the established regulatory process for driver education and testing. Such informal sources are not vetted by the Northwest Territories government and may contain inaccurate, misleading, or even illegal advice, directly contravening the spirit and letter of the Motor Vehicle Act and the commitment to a standardized, safe driving populace. Offering to coach the individual on how to pass the test based on anecdotal experience, without referencing official study materials or legal requirements, is another incorrect approach. This implies a level of expertise or influence that is not authorized by the Northwest Territories Licensing Authority. It risks creating a false sense of security for the individual and could lead to them focusing on superficial test-taking strategies rather than genuine understanding of safe driving practices and legal obligations as mandated by the territory. Professional reasoning. Professionals in any capacity, especially those interacting with individuals seeking to comply with legal requirements, must prioritize accuracy, legality, and ethical conduct. The decision-making process should always begin with identifying the governing regulatory body and its official communication channels. When faced with a request for information related to licensing or legal compliance, the professional's primary responsibility is to direct the inquirer to the authoritative source. This ensures that the information provided is accurate, current, and legally binding, thereby protecting both the individual and the public. If direct assistance is permitted, it must be done strictly within the bounds of authorized guidelines and materials. Question 2. Quality control measures reveal that a driver operating a vehicle in the Northwest Territories is running late for an important appointment and is considering several options to expedite their journey. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical responsibilities of a driver in the Northwest Territories? Option A. Continue driving at or below the posted speed limit, obeying all traffic signals and signs, and accepting the potential for a delayed arrival. Option B. Weave through traffic at a high speed, making frequent and aggressive lane changes. Option C. Disregard a red traffic signal to avoid stopping and potentially save time. Option D. Increase speed significantly beyond the posted speed limit to make up for lost time. The correct answer is A. Continue driving at or below the posted speed limit, obeying all traffic signals and signs, and accepting the potential for a delayed arrival. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a driver to balance the immediate need to reach a destination with the paramount importance of road safety and adherence to traffic laws. The driver's personal urgency, while understandable, must not override their legal and ethical obligations as a road user in the Northwest Territories. Careful judgment is required to assess the risks associated with deviating from safe driving practices. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves prioritizing safety and legal compliance above all else. This means operating the vehicle strictly within the posted speed limits and obeying all traffic signals and signs, even if it means arriving later than intended. The Northwest Territories Traffic Safety Act mandates adherence to speed limits and traffic control devices to ensure the safety of all road users. Ethical driving also encompasses a responsibility to contribute to a safe road environment, which is achieved by following established rules designed to prevent accidents. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves exceeding the posted speed limit to make up for lost time. This directly violates the Northwest Territories Traffic Safety Act, which sets specific speed limits for different road conditions and zones. Such an action significantly increases the risk of losing control of the vehicle, reduces reaction time, and exacerbates the severity of any potential collision, posing a direct threat to the driver and others. Another incorrect approach is to disregard a red traffic signal to avoid stopping. This is a serious violation of traffic laws in the Northwest Territories and is extremely dangerous. Running a red light can lead to severe T-bone collisions, which are often fatal or result in life-altering injuries. It demonstrates a complete disregard for the safety of other road users who have the right-of-way. A third incorrect approach is to weave through traffic at high speed. This maneuver is inherently unsafe and illegal in the Northwest Territories. It involves unpredictable lane changes and aggressive driving, which can startle other drivers, leading to sudden braking or swerving, and increasing the likelihood of sideswipe collisions or loss of control. This behavior creates a chaotic and dangerous environment for everyone on the road. Professional reasoning. Professionals in any field, including driving, must operate with a strong ethical compass and a thorough understanding of the relevant regulations. When faced with a situation where personal convenience conflicts with safety and legal requirements, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the core objective, safe and legal transportation. 2. Recognizing the potential risks and consequences of any deviation from established rules. 3. Consulting the relevant legal framework, in this case, the Northwest Territories Traffic Safety Act. 4. Making a decision that unequivocally prioritizes safety and compliance, even if it means accepting a less desirable personal outcome, like a delayed arrival. Question 3. Quality control measures reveal that a licensing officer in the Northwest Territories has been consistently approving applicants who exhibit minor driving errors during their road tests, citing the need to process applications efficiently. Which approach best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical obligations for driver licensing in the Northwest Territories? Option A. Approving applicants who demonstrate a general understanding of driving rules and exhibit a willingness to learn, even if they make a few minor mistakes during the road test, to expedite the licensing process. Option B. Conducting a comprehensive assessment of the applicant's driving skills and knowledge, strictly adhering to the standards outlined in the Northwest Territories Driver's Licensing Act and its associated regulations, ensuring all required maneuvers and knowledge components are thoroughly evaluated. Option C. Relying on the applicant's verbal commitment to drive safely and follow all traffic laws, accepting this as sufficient evidence of competence without requiring full demonstration during the test. Option D. Allowing applicants to skip certain segments of the road test if they appear confident and knowledgeable, focusing only on the most critical maneuvers to save time. The correct answer is B. Conducting a comprehensive assessment of the applicant's driving skills and knowledge, strictly adhering to the standards outlined in the Northwest Territories Driver's Licensing Act and its associated regulations, ensuring all required maneuvers and knowledge components are thoroughly evaluated. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for a driver's license with the paramount importance of public safety on Northwest Territories roads. A licensing officer must exercise sound judgment to ensure that all applicants meet the required standards, even when faced with potential pressure or a desire to expedite the process. The ethical obligation to uphold the integrity of the licensing system and protect other road users is a significant responsibility. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough and objective assessment of the applicant's driving skills and knowledge, strictly adhering to the standards outlined in the Northwest Territories Driver's Licensing Act and its associated regulations. This includes ensuring the applicant can demonstrate proficiency in all required maneuvers, understands traffic laws specific to the Northwest Territories, and exhibits safe driving habits. The licensing officer must remain impartial and base their decision solely on the applicant's performance against these established criteria, without being influenced by external factors or personal biases. This approach directly upholds the regulatory framework designed to ensure only competent and safe drivers are licensed, thereby protecting public safety. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves overlooking minor errors or hesitations during the driving test, assuming they are inconsequential. This fails to uphold the regulatory requirement for demonstrating consistent safe driving practices and a thorough understanding of traffic laws. Such leniency could result in an unqualified driver being licensed, posing a risk to themselves and others on Northwest Territories roads. Another incorrect approach is to expedite the test by skipping certain required maneuvers or knowledge assessment components. This directly violates the established testing procedures mandated by the Northwest Territories Licensing Authority. It compromises the integrity of the licensing process and fails to adequately assess the applicant's readiness to operate a vehicle safely. A third incorrect approach is to allow the applicant to provide verbal assurances of their knowledge or intent to drive safely, rather than demonstrating these through practical application and adherence to rules during the test. This bypasses the objective assessment of skills and knowledge required by the regulations. It relies on subjective statements rather than verifiable performance, which is unacceptable for a safety-critical licensing process. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established regulations and ethical obligations. This involves 1. Understanding and internalizing the specific requirements of the Northwest Territories Driver's Licensing Act and regulations. 2. Maintaining strict impartiality and objectivity throughout the assessment process. 3. Focusing on observable behaviors and demonstrated skills that align with safety standards. 4. Documenting all observations and decisions clearly and accurately. 5. Recognizing that the primary duty is to public safety, which supersedes any pressure to expedite the process. Question 4. Quality control measures reveal that a driver operating a vehicle on Highway 3 in the Northwest Territories is experiencing significant personal distress that is impacting their concentration. What is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action for this driver? Option A. Pull over to the side of the road briefly to compose themselves, then resume driving. Option B. Continue driving to the nearest town to seek help, as stopping on the side of a remote highway could be dangerous. Option C. Immediately pull over to a safe location off the roadway and contact a trusted individual or emergency services for assistance. Option D. Attempt to manage the distress by focusing harder on driving and listening to calming music. The correct answer is C. Immediately pull over to a safe location off the roadway and contact a trusted individual or emergency services for assistance. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to make a critical decision under pressure, balancing immediate personal needs with the legal and ethical obligations of operating a vehicle. The driver's personal distress could impair judgment, making adherence to traffic laws and responsible actions paramount. The Northwest Territories' traffic regulations are designed to ensure public safety, and any deviation, even if seemingly minor or driven by personal hardship, can have serious consequences. The best approach involves prioritizing safety and legal compliance above all else. This means immediately ceasing operation of the vehicle in a safe location and contacting the appropriate authorities or assistance. This aligns with the fundamental principles of responsible driving and the legal requirements in the Northwest Territories, which mandate that drivers operate their vehicles safely and in accordance with the law. Specifically, the NWT's Traffic Safety Act emphasizes the driver's duty to ensure their vehicle is operated safely and to avoid actions that could endanger themselves or others. Pulling over to a safe location and seeking assistance directly addresses this duty. An incorrect approach would be to continue driving while experiencing significant distress or impairment. This directly violates the driver's obligation to operate a vehicle safely and could lead to an accident, endangering themselves and others. Such an action would be a clear breach of the NWT's Traffic Safety Act. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to drive to a destination to seek help without first ensuring the immediate safety of the vehicle's operation. While the intention might be to resolve the issue, the act of continuing to drive, while potentially impaired or distracted by distress, poses an unacceptable risk and contravenes the driver's responsibility to maintain control and awareness at all times. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to ignore the personal distress and attempt to push through it without taking any mitigating action. This disregards the potential impact of emotional distress on driving ability and fails to uphold the duty of care expected of all drivers in the Northwest Territories. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes immediate safety and legal adherence. This involves a self-assessment of one's ability to operate a vehicle safely. If there is any doubt, the immediate action should be to stop driving in a safe manner and seek appropriate assistance, rather than risking a breach of regulations or causing harm. Question 5. Quality control measures reveal that a driver's license applicant in the Northwest Territories has submitted an application form that is missing a required supporting document, specifically proof of residency. The applicant is present at the licensing office. What is the most appropriate course of action for the licensing registrar? Option A. Immediately deny the driver's license application due to the incomplete submission, without further discussion or opportunity for the applicant to provide the missing document. Option B. Contact other government departments within the Northwest Territories to inquire if they have the applicant's proof of residency on file, without the applicant's explicit consent. Option C. Accept the application with the understanding that the proof of residency will be provided at a later date, and flag the file for follow-up by administrative staff. Option D. Inform the applicant of the missing proof of residency. Explain the specific documentation required by Northwest Territories regulations, and provide a reasonable timeframe for them to submit the missing document. Correct answer is D. Inform the applicant of the missing proof of residency. Explain the specific documentation required by Northwest Territories regulations, and provide a reasonable timeframe for them to submit the missing document. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the legal and ethical obligations to protect personal information and ensure fair and transparent processes. A driver's license application in the Northwest Territories involves sensitive personal data, and mishandling it can lead to privacy breaches, legal repercussions, and erosion of public trust. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing demands. The best approach involves a systematic and legally compliant method for verifying information. This includes clearly communicating the need for additional documentation to the applicant, explaining the specific requirements based on the Northwest Territories driver licensing regulations, and providing a reasonable timeframe for submission. This approach respects the applicant's rights while fulfilling the registrar's duty to ensure accurate and complete applications, adhering to the principles of due process and data privacy as outlined in Northwest Territories legislation governing personal information and vehicle licensing. An approach that immediately denies the application without providing the applicant an opportunity to rectify the deficiency is procedurally unfair and likely violates the principles of natural justice. It fails to offer the applicant a chance to provide the necessary supporting documents, which is a fundamental aspect of administrative fairness. Another incorrect approach, which involves accepting the application with incomplete information and flagging it for later review, creates a significant risk of data integrity issues and potential fraud. This bypasses the established verification procedures mandated by the Northwest Territories driver licensing framework, which requires complete documentation at the point of application. Finally, an approach that involves sharing the applicant's incomplete information with other government departments without explicit consent or legal authority is a serious breach of privacy legislation applicable in the Northwest Territories. This action would undermine the trust placed in the licensing authority and could result in legal penalties. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicles Act and associated regulations. This framework involves 1. Understanding the specific documentation requirements for the type of license being applied for. 2. Clearly communicating these requirements to the applicant and providing a reasonable opportunity to comply. 3. Documenting all interactions and decisions made. 4. Escalating complex cases or seeking clarification from supervisors or legal counsel when necessary. This ensures both efficiency and compliance with legal and ethical standards. Question 6. Quality control measures reveal that a driver operating a vehicle in the Northwest Territories is unsure about when to activate their headlights during periods of reduced visibility that are not clearly defined as night or heavy precipitation. Which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to safe driving practices and relevant regulations? Option A. Rely exclusively on the vehicle's automatic light sensor to determine when to turn on headlights. Option B. Activate headlights only when encountering other vehicles on the road. Option C. Activate headlights whenever visibility is reduced, such as during twilight, fog, or overcast conditions, even if it is not officially nighttime or raining heavily. Option D. Only activate headlights when it is officially dark or during precipitation that significantly impairs vision. The correct answer is C. Activate headlights whenever visibility is reduced, such as during twilight, fog, or overcast conditions, even if it is not officially nighttime or raining heavily. Explanation: the scenario presents a professional challenge for a driver in the Northwest Territories regarding the proper use of vehicle lights, especially in adverse weather conditions. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying the specific regulations for lighting to ensure visibility and safety, which can be ambiguous when conditions are not clearly defined as daylight or night. Careful judgment is required to err on the side of caution and maximize visibility to other road users. The best approach involves proactively activating headlights whenever visibility is reduced, regardless of the official time of day. This aligns with the spirit of the Northwest Territories traffic laws, which prioritize safety and visibility. Specifically, the Northwest Territories traffic regulations, under sections pertaining to vehicle lighting, mandate the use of lights to ensure the vehicle is visible to others and that the driver can see. While not explicitly stating reduced visibility, the intent is to ensure adequate illumination in all conditions that might impair visibility. Activating headlights in situations like fog, heavy rain, snow, or even during twilight hours when natural light is insufficient directly addresses this regulatory intent by making the vehicle more conspicuous and improving the driver's own sightlines. This proactive measure is ethically sound as it prioritizes the safety of oneself and other road users. An incorrect approach would be to only activate headlights when it is officially dark or during precipitation that is heavy enough to be considered an immediate hazard. This fails to account for the gradual reduction in visibility during twilight or in conditions like light fog or overcast skies, which can still significantly impair a driver's ability to be seen. This approach risks violating the spirit, if not the letter, of the regulations by not ensuring the vehicle is adequately visible at all times when visibility is compromised. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the automatic light sensors of a vehicle, if equipped. While convenient, these sensors may not always accurately detect subtle reductions in visibility, or may be calibrated to a threshold that is not sufficiently cautious for all driving conditions in the Northwest Territories. This approach abdicates personal responsibility for ensuring safe operation and compliance with lighting regulations. Finally, An incorrect approach would be to only activate headlights when encountering other vehicles. This is a reactive measure that fails to proactively enhance visibility and can lead to situations where the driver is not seen by oncoming traffic until it is too late. This approach is ethically deficient as it prioritizes convenience over the safety of others. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance. This involves understanding the intent behind the regulations, not just the literal wording. When in doubt about visibility, the default action should always be to increase the vehicle's conspicuity by activating headlights. This proactive, safety-first mindset is crucial for responsible driving in the Northwest Territories. Question 7. Stakeholder feedback indicates concerns regarding the process for assessing the medical fitness of drivers in the Northwest Territories, particularly when a driver reports a health condition that might affect their ability to operate a vehicle safely. Considering the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicle Act, what is the most appropriate initial step for a licensing authority when presented with such a situation? Option A. Immediately suspend the driver's license based on the reported health condition to prevent any potential risk to public safety. Option B. Request a comprehensive medical report from the driver's physician that specifically addresses their ability to operate a motor vehicle safely, in accordance with NWT regulations. Option C. Accept the driver's verbal assurance that their health condition does not impair their driving ability and allow them to continue driving without further medical review. Option D. Advise the driver to seek a general health checkup from any available healthcare provider and submit a generic doctor's note. The correct answer is B. Request a comprehensive medical report from the driver's physician that specifically addresses their ability to operate a motor vehicle safely, in accordance with NWT regulations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for road safety with the potential impact on individuals' livelihoods and community access. The driver's situation, while potentially impacting their ability to drive, also involves personal circumstances that require a sensitive and legally compliant approach. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the decision made is both fair to the individual and upholds the safety standards mandated by Northwest Territories NWT driving regulations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough review of the driver's medical information in conjunction with the NWT Motor Vehicle Act and its associated regulations concerning medical fitness to drive. This approach prioritizes obtaining all necessary documentation, including a medical report from the driver's physician that specifically addresses their ability to operate a vehicle safely, considering any diagnosed conditions. This aligns with the NWT's commitment to road safety by ensuring that only medically fit individuals are licensed to drive, as stipulated by legislation. The process should also include an opportunity for the driver to provide further information or seek clarification, ensuring procedural fairness. Incorrect approaches analysis. Failing to request a formal medical report from the driver's physician and instead relying on the driver's verbal assurance or a general statement about their health is a significant regulatory failure. The NWT Motor Vehicle Act requires objective medical evidence to assess fitness to drive, not subjective opinions. This approach bypasses the established legal framework for medical evaluations, potentially putting other road users at risk. Immediately revoking the driver's license based solely on a suspicion of a medical condition, without allowing for a proper medical assessment and review process, is an overreach and a failure to adhere to due process. Regulations typically outline a specific procedure for medical reviews, which includes providing the individual with an opportunity to present evidence of their fitness to drive. This approach is ethically questionable as it presumes guilt or unfitness without proper investigation. Accepting a medical opinion from a source not recognized or qualified under NWT regulations, or one that does not specifically address driving capabilities, is also a failure. The NWT government has guidelines on what constitutes a valid medical assessment for licensing purposes. Relying on unqualified opinions undermines the integrity of the licensing system and the safety standards it aims to maintain. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation must follow a structured decision-making process. This begins with identifying the relevant legislation and regulations, in this case, the NWT Motor Vehicle Act, and related medical fitness guidelines. Next, gather all necessary information, which includes requesting specific documentation from the driver and their medical provider. Evaluate this information against the legal requirements for medical fitness to drive. If there are ambiguities or concerns, initiate the formal review process outlined in the regulations, which may involve further medical assessments or hearings. Throughout the process, maintain clear and professional communication with the driver, respecting their rights and providing opportunities for them to respond. Question 8. The performance metrics show a decline in the thoroughness of vehicle inspections conducted by licensed technicians across the Northwest Territories. Considering the Motor Vehicles Act and its regulations, which of the following approaches best addresses this situation to ensure continued road safety and regulatory compliance? Option A. Immediately impose stricter performance-based disciplinary actions on technicians whose inspection reports fall below the average metric. Option B. Mandate an increase in the number of inspections each technician must complete daily to compensate for the perceived decline in thoroughness. Option C. Conduct a detailed review of inspection records, inspector training protocols, and equipment calibration logs to identify specific areas of deficiency and implement targeted remedial actions. Option D. Revise the inspection checklist to include more items without assessing the current checklist's effectiveness or inspector comprehension. The correct answer is C. Conduct a detailed review of inspection records, inspector training protocols, and equipment calibration logs to identify specific areas of deficiency and implement targeted remedial actions. Explanation. The performance metrics show a concerning trend in vehicle inspections within the Northwest Territories. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient service delivery with the absolute imperative of upholding public safety and regulatory compliance. A superficial approach could lead to compromised safety standards, while an overly bureaucratic one might hinder necessary operations. Careful judgment is required to identify the root cause of the performance dip and implement effective, compliant solutions. The best approach involves a thorough, data-driven investigation into the specific reasons behind the declining performance metrics. This includes reviewing inspection records for patterns of noncompliance, assessing the training and competency of inspectors, and examining the condition and calibration of inspection equipment. This method is correct because it directly addresses the observed problem by seeking factual evidence, aligning with the Northwest Territories' commitment to road safety as outlined in the Motor Vehicles Act and its associated regulations. This proactive and investigative stance ensures that any corrective actions are targeted, effective, and compliant with the spirit and letter of the law, prioritizing the safety of all road users. An approach that focuses solely on increasing the volume of inspections without investigating the underlying causes is professionally unacceptable. This would likely lead to rushed inspections, potentially overlooking critical safety defects and failing to address any systemic issues with inspectors or equipment. Such a strategy would violate the ethical obligation to ensure vehicle roadworthiness and could contravene the regulatory requirement for thorough and accurate inspections. Another unacceptable approach is to immediately implement stricter penalties for inspectors based on the performance metrics alone, without understanding the context. This could demoralize inspectors, create a climate of fear, and lead to arbitrary enforcement rather than consistent application of standards. It fails to acknowledge that performance issues can stem from factors beyond an individual inspector's control, such as inadequate resources or training, and thus does not represent a fair or effective response. Finally, an approach that involves simply updating inspection checklists without verifying their effectiveness or the inspector's understanding of them is also flawed. Checklists are tools, not solutions in themselves. If the underlying issues are related to inspector knowledge, equipment, or process, a mere checklist update will not resolve the problem and may even create confusion. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes evidence-based problem solving. This involves clearly defining the problem, gathering relevant data, analyzing that data to identify root causes, developing potential solutions, evaluating those solutions against regulatory requirements and ethical principles, implementing the chosen solution, and then monitoring its effectiveness. This systematic process ensures that actions are not only compliant but also genuinely contribute to the intended outcome of enhanced public safety. Question 9. Quality control measures reveal a driver operating a vehicle on Highway 3 in the Northwest Territories during a light snowfall and overcast conditions at dusk. The driver has not activated their headlights, believing visibility is still adequate. Based on the Northwest Territories traffic regulations, what is the most appropriate course of action for the driver to ensure compliance and safety? Option A. Observe if other vehicles on the road are using their headlights and activate them only if a majority of other drivers are doing so. Option B. Rely on the vehicle's automatic light sensor, assuming it will activate the headlights if necessary, and continue driving. Option C. Continue driving without headlights until the snowfall intensifies or visibility significantly decreases, as current conditions are not severe enough to warrant them. Option D. Immediately activate headlights to ensure maximum visibility to other road users, and comply with regulations for reduced visibility. The correct answer is D. Immediately activate headlights to ensure maximum visibility to other road users, and comply with regulations for reduced visibility. Explanation. The scenario presents a professional challenge for a driver in the Northwest Territories concerning the proper use of vehicle lights, particularly in adverse weather conditions. The challenge lies in accurately assessing the environmental conditions and applying the correct lighting regulations to ensure visibility and safety, thereby avoiding potential infractions and, more importantly, preventing accidents. Careful judgment is required to interpret the nuances of reduced visibility as defined by Northwest Territories law. The best approach involves a proactive and cautious interpretation of the law. This means activating headlights whenever there is any doubt about visibility, especially during dawn, dusk, or in precipitation. This aligns with the principle of erring on the side of caution to maximize safety and comply with the spirit of the law, which prioritizes clear visibility for all road users. The Northwest Territories traffic regulations mandate the use of headlights when visibility is reduced, and this approach ensures compliance by anticipating potential hazards rather than reacting to them. An incorrect approach would be to only activate headlights when visibility is severely impaired, such as during heavy fog or a blizzard. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement of using headlights when visibility is reduced, which can occur in less extreme conditions like light rain, snow, or even during twilight hours. This reactive stance increases the risk of not being seen by other drivers and could lead to a violation. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the automatic light sensors of a vehicle, if equipped. While convenient, these sensors may not always accurately detect the subtle reductions in visibility that still necessitate headlight use under Northwest Territories law. Over-reliance on technology without personal judgment can lead to non-compliance. Finally, an incorrect approach is to assume that if other vehicles are not using their headlights, it is not necessary. This is a dangerous assumption that ignores individual responsibility for safe driving and adherence to regulations. Each driver must assess conditions independently and comply with the law, regardless of the actions of others. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance. This involves understanding the specific requirements of the Northwest Territories traffic regulations regarding vehicle lighting, actively assessing environmental conditions, and making a judgment call to activate headlights whenever there is any potential for reduced visibility, even if it seems minor. This proactive and cautious mindset is crucial for preventing accidents and ensuring legal adherence. Question 10. Market research demonstrates that understanding the total annual cost of vehicle operation is vital for responsible driving in the Northwest Territories. If a driver in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, drives an average of 15,000 kilometers per year, and their vehicle consumes 9.5 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers, with the average fuel price being $1.75 per liter. Annual insurance costs are $1,200, estimated annual maintenance is $600, and annual registration fees are $150. What is the total estimated annual cost of operating this vehicle? Option A, $3,075.00. Option B, $2,475.00. Option C, $4,757.50. Option D, $4,157.50. The correct answer is C, $4,757.50. Explanation. Market research demonstrates that understanding the financial implications of vehicle ownership is crucial for responsible decision-making by drivers in the Northwest Territories. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to not only understand basic financial calculations, but also to apply them within the context of specific Northwest Territories vehicle operation costs, which can be significantly influenced by factors like fuel prices and insurance rates. Careful judgment is required to accurately estimate these costs and make informed comparisons. The best approach involves a comprehensive calculation of all relevant annual operating costs, including fuel, insurance, maintenance, and registration fees, using the provided data and applying the average annual mileage. This method is correct because it directly addresses the question by providing a realistic and quantifiable estimate of the total annual cost of operating the vehicle. It aligns with the principles of responsible financial planning and demonstrates an understanding of the practical financial commitments associated with vehicle ownership in the Northwest Territories, as implicitly encouraged by the need for drivers to be financially aware. An incorrect approach would be to only calculate the fuel cost based on the average mileage and current fuel price. This is professionally unacceptable because it fails to account for other significant and mandatory expenses associated with vehicle ownership, such as insurance premiums, routine maintenance, and annual registration fees. This incomplete calculation would lead to a severely underestimated annual cost, providing a misleading picture of the true financial burden. Another incorrect approach would be to simply add the cost of fuel and insurance without considering maintenance and registration. This is professionally unacceptable, as it omits essential recurring costs that contribute to the overall annual expenditure of operating a vehicle. Ignoring these components results in an inaccurate financial assessment. A further incorrect approach would be to calculate the fuel cost based on a hypothetical lower fuel price than the one provided. This is professionally unacceptable because it deviates from the given data and introduces an unsupported assumption. Adhering to the provided information is fundamental for accurate financial assessment and demonstrates a lack of diligence in following instructions and using available data. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that prioritizes accuracy, completeness, and adherence to provided data. This involves 1. Identifying all relevant cost components specified or implied by the scenario. 2. Utilizing all provided data points and applying appropriate mathematical formulas. 3. Performing calculations systematically and verifying the results. 4. Ensuring the final answer directly addresses the question asked and reflects a realistic financial picture. Question 11. Quality control measures reveal that a licensing officer in the Northwest Territories has been requesting extensive personal history details from applicants beyond what is explicitly listed as required for a standard driver's license application, citing a general need for thorough vetting. Which of the following best describes the appropriate response to this situation? Option A. The licensing officer should be commended for their diligence in thorough vetting, and the practice should be encouraged as a proactive measure to ensure applicant suitability. Option B. The licensing officer should be allowed to continue the practice, provided they obtain a verbal confirmation from the applicant that they consent to the broader information request. Option C. The licensing officer should continue requesting the additional information, but ensure it is stored securely, as thorough vetting is implicitly understood to be part of the licensing process. Option D. The licensing officer must immediately cease requesting extraneous personal information and be retrained on the specific data requirements outlined in the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicles Act and the principles of the Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act, with a focus on data minimization and purpose limitation. The correct answer is D. The licensing officer must immediately cease requesting extraneous personal information and be retrained on the specific data requirements outlined in the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicles Act and the principles of the Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act, with a focus on data minimization and purpose limitation. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the legal and ethical obligations to protect personal information and ensure fair and transparent processes. A driver's license application in the Northwest Territories involves sensitive personal data, and mishandling this information can lead to privacy breaches, legal repercussions, and a loss of public trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure compliance with the Northwest Territories privacy legislation and the Motor Vehicles Act. The best approach involves a structured and documented process that respects the applicant's rights and adheres to regulatory requirements. This includes clearly communicating the purpose of data collection, obtaining informed consent where necessary, and ensuring data is stored and accessed securely. Specifically, it means adhering to the principles of the Northwest Territories Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act (ADIP) Act by only requesting and using information that is directly relevant to the licensing process and is legally permissible. This approach ensures accountability and protects the applicant's privacy. An incorrect approach would be to broadly request all available information without a clear, documented justification tied to the licensing requirements. This could violate the ADIP Act by collecting information that is not necessary for the stated purpose and could lead to unauthorized access or disclosure. Another incorrect approach is to assume that because an individual is applying for a license, all their personal information is automatically accessible. This disregards the specific provisions of privacy legislation that govern data collection and use. Finally, failing to inform the applicant about how their information will be used and protected is a significant ethical and regulatory failure, undermining the principle of informed consent and transparency. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance and ethical conduct. This involves 1. Identifying the specific legal requirements for driver's license applications in the Northwest Territories, referencing the Motor Vehicles Act and the ADIP Act. 2. Determining what personal information is strictly necessary to fulfill these requirements. 3. Establishing clear procedures for data collection, storage, and access that align with privacy principles. 4. Ensuring all staff are trained on these procedures and the relevant legislation. 5. Documenting all decisions and processes for accountability. Question 12. Quality control measures reveal that a driver operating a vehicle on Highway 1 in the Northwest Territories encounters a sudden and severe blizzard, significantly reducing visibility to near zero and creating extremely slippery road conditions. What is the most appropriate immediate action to ensure compliance with Northwest Territories driving regulations and professional safe driving practices? Option A. Maintain a moderate speed, assuming other drivers will be cautious, and attempt to navigate through the blizzard by relying on lane markings if visible. Option B. Increase speed slightly to try and outrun the worst of the blizzard before it fully engulfs the vehicle. Option C. Continue driving at a slightly reduced speed, believing that the vehicle's four-wheel drive system will provide sufficient traction and control. Option D. Immediately reduce speed to a crawl, activate hazard lights, and if conditions become unmanageable, pull over to a safe location off the traveled portion of the road to wait for the blizzard to subside or for conditions to improve. Correct answer is D. Immediately reduce speed to a crawl, activate hazard lights, and if conditions become unmanageable, pull over to a safe location off the traveled portion of the road to wait for the blizzard to subside or for conditions to improve. Explanation. The scenario presents a professional challenge for a driver in the Northwest Territories due to the unique environmental conditions and the specific regulations governing road safety in the territory. The primary challenge lies in balancing the need to reach a destination with the absolute imperative of ensuring the safety of oneself and others, especially when encountering unexpected road hazards. Careful judgment is required to assess risk and make decisions that align with the Motor Vehicles Act of the Northwest Territories. The best professional approach involves prioritizing immediate safety and adhering strictly to established safe driving practices as mandated by Northwest Territories law. This means recognizing the limitations of the vehicle and the road conditions and taking proactive steps to mitigate risks. Specifically, this involves slowing down significantly, activating hazard lights to alert other drivers, and if conditions are too severe, pulling over safely to wait for conditions to improve or for assistance. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the duty of care drivers have under the Motor Vehicles Act, which emphasizes operating a vehicle in a safe and responsible manner and taking all reasonable precautions to avoid accidents. It also reflects the ethical responsibility to protect human life and property. An incorrect approach would be to continue driving at a speed that is unsafe for the conditions, even if the driver believes they can manage. This demonstrates a disregard for the potential hazards and violates the principle of operating a vehicle with due care and attention, as required by law. Another incorrect approach is to assume that other drivers will be able to anticipate and react to the hazardous conditions, thereby failing to take adequate personal precautions to signal and reduce speed. This shifts responsibility inappropriately and increases the risk of collision. Finally, attempting to navigate through conditions that are clearly beyond the safe operating capabilities of the vehicle or the driver's skill level without stopping is a direct contravention of safe driving principles and the spirit of the Motor Vehicles Act, which prioritizes preventing accidents over reaching a destination quickly. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough assessment of the immediate road and environmental conditions. This involves considering visibility, road surface traction, and the presence of other vehicles or hazards. The next step is to evaluate personal and vehicle capabilities against these conditions. If there is any doubt about the ability to proceed safely, the default decision should be to reduce speed, increase awareness, and if necessary, stop. This framework emphasizes proactive risk management and adherence to legal and ethical obligations over expediency. Question 13. Cost-benefit analysis shows that constructing a new all-season road through a sensitive caribou calving ground in the Northwest Territories could significantly boost economic activity. However, the potential disruption to wildlife migration patterns and the impact on local indigenous communities' traditional hunting grounds are major concerns. Which approach best balances economic development with environmental and social stewardship in this context? Option A. Rely on existing general environmental guidelines for road construction in the region, without conducting specific studies for this particular sensitive area. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive environmental and social impact assessment (EISA) to thoroughly evaluate potential effects on air quality, water resources, wildlife habitats, and local communities, and develop robust mitigation strategies based on the findings. Option C. Proceed with the road construction, prioritizing economic benefits, and address any environmental or social issues that arise on a case-by-case basis after the project is completed. Option D. Implement a limited environmental review focusing only on the direct physical footprint of the road, assuming minimal long-term ecological or social consequences. Correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive environmental and social impact assessment (EISA) to thoroughly evaluate potential effects on air quality, water resources, wildlife habitats, and local communities, and develop robust mitigation strategies based on the findings. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for infrastructure development with the long-term environmental and social consequences. The decision-maker must navigate competing interests, potential impacts on wildlife, and the sustainability of the project within the specific regulatory landscape of the Northwest Territories. Careful judgment is required to ensure compliance with the NWT's environmental assessment processes and to uphold ethical responsibilities towards the environment and its inhabitants. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves conducting a comprehensive environmental and social impact assessment (EISA) that thoroughly evaluates potential effects on air quality, water resources, wildlife habitats, and local communities. This approach aligns with the principles of responsible development and the regulatory requirements for major projects in the Northwest Territories, which mandate detailed studies to identify, predict, and mitigate adverse impacts. The EISA process, as outlined in NWT legislation, ensures that decision-makers have access to robust scientific data and community input to make informed choices that prioritize environmental protection and sustainable development. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the project based solely on economic benefits without a detailed assessment of environmental and social risks. This fails to comply with the NWT's environmental assessment legislation, which requires a proactive identification and mitigation of potential harm. Ethically, it disregards the responsibility to protect the environment and the well-being of communities. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial assessment that only considers easily quantifiable impacts, such as direct construction costs, while ignoring indirect or cumulative effects on ecosystems and traditional land uses. This approach is deficient because it does not meet the comprehensive requirements of an EISA and can lead to unforeseen environmental degradation and social disruption, violating the precautionary principle often embedded in environmental law. A third incorrect approach is to rely on outdated or incomplete baseline data for environmental conditions. This can result in an inaccurate understanding of potential impacts and the development of inadequate mitigation strategies. It is a failure to adhere to the scientific rigor expected in impact assessments and can lead to non-compliance with regulatory standards designed to protect the NWT's unique environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic decision-making process that begins with understanding the full scope of regulatory requirements for projects in the Northwest Territories. This includes identifying all potential environmental and social impacts, engaging with affected communities and indigenous groups, and developing robust mitigation and monitoring plans. The process should be iterative, allowing for adjustments based on new information and feedback, and always prioritizing long-term sustainability and compliance with the law. Question 14. The monitoring system indicates that a driver operating a vehicle in the Northwest Territories has noticed that one of their brake lights has ceased to function. Considering the potential impact on road safety and compliance with Northwest Territories traffic regulations, what is the most responsible course of action? Option A. Drive cautiously and hope to reach the destination without encountering any situations where the faulty brake light causes an issue. Option B. Immediately cease driving and arrange for the brake light to be repaired before continuing the journey. Option C. Continue driving to the nearest mechanic, assuming the risk is minimal as the other brake light is still operational. Option D. Attempt a temporary roadside fix for the brake light, using available materials to restore functionality. The correct answer is B. Immediately cease driving and arrange for the brake light to be repaired before continuing the journey. Explanation. The monitoring system demonstrates a potential lapse in adherence to the Northwest Territories traffic safety regulations concerning vehicle maintenance and roadworthiness. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an immediate assessment of risk to public safety versus the operational needs of the driver and the potential for minor infractions to escalate. A driver's responsibility extends beyond simply operating a vehicle. It includes ensuring the vehicle is in a safe and legal condition to be on public roads. The correct approach involves prioritizing immediate safety and compliance with Northwest Territories legislation. This means recognizing that a malfunctioning safety feature, such as a brake light, poses a direct and immediate hazard. Driver must take proactive steps to rectify the issue before continuing their journey. This aligns with the fundamental principle of road safety enshrined in Northwest Territories traffic laws, which mandate that all vehicles must be maintained in a safe operating condition. Specifically, regulations likely require functional lighting for visibility and signaling, crucial for preventing accidents. An incorrect approach would be to disregard the malfunctioning brake light, assuming it is a minor issue that can be addressed later. This fails to acknowledge the immediate safety risk it presents to other road users, particularly in conditions of reduced visibility common in the Northwest Territories. Such an action directly contravenes the spirit and letter of traffic safety laws designed to prevent collisions. Another incorrect approach involves attempting to self-repair the issue without the necessary expertise or tools, potentially exacerbating the problem or creating new safety hazards. This bypasses established procedures for vehicle maintenance and repair, which are implicitly understood to be conducted by qualified individuals or in appropriate settings. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to continue driving and hope to avoid detection or a situation where the faulty brake light becomes critical. This demonstrates a lack of responsibility and a disregard for the potential consequences, both legally and in terms of public safety. It prioritizes convenience over the legal and ethical obligation to operate a safe vehicle. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying potential hazards and regulatory noncompliance. This involves a clear understanding of the Northwest Territories traffic laws regarding vehicle condition and safety equipment. The next step is to assess the severity of the issue and its immediate impact on safety. If a safety risk is identified, the priority must be to mitigate that risk, which may involve stopping the journey, seeking immediate repair, or contacting appropriate authorities for guidance. Documentation of the issue and the steps taken is also a crucial part of professional practice. Question 15. During the evaluation of a vehicle's performance on a highway in the Northwest Territories, a driver notices a persistent, unusual warning light illuminate on the dashboard indicating a potential mechanical issue. What is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action? Option A. Ignore the warning light and continue driving as normal, assuming it is a minor or temporary fault. Option B. Immediately pull over to a safe location off the roadway and assess the situation before proceeding. Option C. Continue driving to the nearest service station, even if it requires driving a short distance on the highway. Option D. Attempt a quick, temporary fix on the side of the road while the vehicle is still partially in a traffic lane. Correct answer is B. Immediately pull over to a safe location off the roadway and assess the situation before proceeding. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance immediate personal needs with the legal and safety obligations imposed by the Northwest Territories traffic laws. The temptation to prioritize convenience over safety and compliance is a common pitfall, demanding a driver's commitment to responsible decision-making even when faced with minor inconveniences. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves immediately ceasing operation of the vehicle and ensuring it is parked safely and legally before addressing the issue. This approach aligns directly with Section 137 of the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicles Act, which mandates that a driver must not operate a vehicle in a manner that is unsafe or likely to cause damage. By pulling over and securing the vehicle, the driver is fulfilling their primary duty of care to themselves, other road users, and property, thereby preventing potential hazards and legal repercussions. This proactive measure demonstrates adherence to the spirit and letter of traffic regulations designed to maintain public safety. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves continuing to drive to the nearest service station, even if it's a short distance away. This action directly violates the principle of operating a vehicle only when it is in a safe condition. The potential for the issue to worsen while in motion could lead to a breakdown in a more dangerous location, increased damage to the vehicle, or even an accident, all of which are contrary to the safety objectives of the Northwest Territories traffic legislation. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the warning light and continue driving as normal, assuming it might be a minor or temporary issue. This demonstrates a disregard for the vehicle's warning systems, which are designed to alert the driver to potential mechanical problems. The Motor Vehicles Act implicitly requires drivers to maintain their vehicles in a roadworthy condition. Ignoring a warning light is a failure to do so and could lead to significant mechanical failure, posing a serious safety risk and potentially resulting in penalties under the Act. A further incorrect approach is to attempt a quick, temporary fix on the side of the road without ensuring the vehicle is safely parked and the area is secure. This is dangerous as it exposes the driver to traffic hazards and could lead to improper repairs that do not address the root cause, potentially causing further damage or unsafe operation. The priority must always be safety and compliance with traffic laws, which includes ensuring a safe environment for any necessary roadside checks or minor adjustments. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and legal compliance above all else. When faced with a vehicle malfunction indicated by a warning light, the immediate step should be to assess the severity of the warning, find a safe location to pull over, and then consult the vehicle's manual or seek professional assistance. This systematic approach ensures that immediate risks are mitigated before attempting any further action, aligning with the ethical responsibility of a driver to operate a vehicle safely and responsibly within the legal framework of the Northwest Territories. Question 16. What factors determine a safe driving speed for a vehicle operating on a highway in the Northwest Territories when encountering a dense fog that significantly reduces visibility to less than 100 meters? Option A. The posted speed limit for the highway, assuming other drivers are also exercising caution. Option B. The effectiveness of the vehicle's headlights in penetrating the fog. Option C. The driver's familiarity with the road and their desire to reach their destination promptly. Option D. The driver's ability to see clearly ahead and the legal requirement to be able to stop within that visible distance. The correct answer is D. The driver's ability to see clearly ahead and the legal requirement to be able to stop within that visible distance. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to make a judgment call about road safety in a situation where visibility is significantly reduced due to adverse weather. The driver must balance their desire to reach their destination with their legal obligation to operate their vehicle safely and responsibly, considering the potential risks to themselves and others. The Northwest Territories' unique climate and road conditions necessitate a heightened awareness of these responsibilities. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves prioritizing safety and adhering strictly to the Northwest Territories traffic laws regarding reduced visibility. This means slowing down to a speed that allows for safe stopping within the distance the driver can see ahead, and being prepared to stop immediately if necessary. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the fundamental principles of safe driving, enshrined in the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicle Act, which mandates that drivers must drive at a speed that is safe for the prevailing conditions, including visibility. It also reflects the ethical responsibility of all road users to prevent accidents and protect lives. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to maintain the posted speed limit, assuming that other drivers will also be cautious. This is a regulatory failure because the posted speed limit is a maximum under ideal conditions, not a mandate for all conditions. The Motor Vehicle Act requires drivers to adjust their speed based on visibility, road surface, and traffic, and failing to do so in reduced visibility is a violation. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the increased risk posed to oneself and others. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on headlights to improve visibility without adjusting speed. While headlights are important, they do not compensate for the reduced perception distance caused by fog or heavy precipitation. This is a practical and regulatory failure, as it does not address the core issue of being able to stop safely. The law expects drivers to adapt their driving behavior, not just their vehicle's equipment, to the conditions. A third incorrect approach is to pull over to the side of the road and stop completely without activating hazard lights or taking other precautions. While stopping might seem safe, doing so abruptly and without signaling can create a hazard for other drivers who may not see the stationary vehicle, especially in poor visibility. This can be a violation of rules regarding stopping on the roadway and demonstrates a lack of consideration for other road users. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough assessment of the immediate environmental conditions, specifically focusing on visibility. They must then consult their knowledge of the Northwest Territories traffic laws, particularly those pertaining to speed and safe driving practices in adverse weather. The guiding principle should always be to err on the side of caution, prioritizing the prevention of accidents over adherence to a schedule. This involves a proactive rather than reactive approach, anticipating potential hazards and adjusting driving behavior accordingly. Question 17. Quality control measures reveal a situation at a Northwest Territories licensing office where an applicant for a driver's license is unable to produce the standard required government-issued identification, but insists they are the person they claim to be and offers a utility bill and a social media profile as proof of their identity. Considering the regulatory framework governing driver's licenses in the Northwest Territories, which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and legally compliant response? Option A. Accept the utility bill and social media profile as supplementary evidence of identity, in addition to the applicant's verbal confirmation, to expedite the licensing process. Option B. Politely inform the applicant that only the officially recognized forms of identification, as stipulated by Northwest Territories law, can be accepted for a driver's license application and offer to explain what those acceptable documents are. Option C. Proceed with issuing the driver's license based on the applicant's strong assertion of their identity and the provided non-official documents, to avoid causing inconvenience. Option D. Advise the applicant to return when they can obtain the correct identification, without offering further guidance on what constitutes acceptable documentation. The correct answer is B. Politely inform the applicant that only the officially recognized forms of identification, as stipulated by Northwest Territories law, can be accepted for a driver's license application, and offer to explain what those acceptable documents are. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the legal and ethical obligations to protect personal data and ensure fair access to services. A driver's license application in the Northwest Territories involves sensitive personal information, and mishandling it can lead to privacy breaches, identity theft, and erosion of public trust in the licensing authority. Careful judgment is required to uphold the integrity of the application process while serving the public efficiently. The best approach involves verifying the applicant's identity through official documentation, as mandated by the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicle Act and its associated regulations. This process ensures that the license is issued to the correct individual, preventing fraud and maintaining the accuracy of the driver registry. It directly aligns with the regulatory requirement to confirm identity before issuing a license, thereby upholding the law and ensuring public safety. An approach that bypasses official documentation for a driver's license application in the Northwest Territories is professionally unacceptable because it violates the Motor Vehicle Act. This act specifies the types of identification required for license issuance. Failing to adhere to these requirements creates a significant security risk, potentially allowing individuals to obtain licenses under false pretenses, which compromises road safety and the integrity of the licensing system. Another unacceptable approach is to rely solely on a verbal confirmation of identity without any supporting documentation. This is a direct contravention of the established procedures designed to prevent fraud and ensure accurate record keeping, as outlined in the Northwest Territories licensing regulations. Such a method leaves the system vulnerable to impersonation and misrepresentation. Finally, an approach that involves accepting a non-official form of identification, such as a social media profile or a utility bill not specifically listed as acceptable proof of identity by the Northwest Territories Licensing Authority, is also professionally unsound. This deviates from the legally prescribed verification methods and introduces an unacceptable level of risk, potentially leading to the issuance of licenses to unqualified or unauthorized individuals. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and data security. This involves 1. Understanding the specific documentation requirements stipulated by the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicle Act and related regulations. 2. Implementing a consistent verification process for all applicants. 3. Recognizing the limitations of unofficial or unverified information. 4. Escalating any unusual or suspicious circumstances to a supervisor or designated authority for further review, ensuring that all actions are defensible under the law and ethical guidelines. Question 18. The control framework reveals that a commercial driver operating a vehicle on a highway in the Northwest Territories notices an unusual vibration and a faint, intermittent squealing noise originating from the front passenger side wheel assembly. The driver is currently on a tight schedule for a delivery. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to ensure compliance with safety regulations and professional responsibility? Option A. Attempt to adjust the vehicle's speed and braking patterns to see if the vibration or noise subsides, and if it does, continue the journey without further investigation. Option B. Immediately pull over to a safe location to conduct a thorough visual inspection of the wheel assembly and surrounding components, and if any abnormality is detected, cease operation until the issue is rectified by a qualified mechanic. Option C. Turn up the radio to drown out the noise and focus on maintaining a consistent speed to minimize the potential for the vibration to worsen. Option D. Continue driving to the destination, closely monitoring the vibration and noise, and plan to have the vehicle inspected by a mechanic upon completion of the delivery route. The correct answer is B. Immediately pull over to a safe location to conduct a thorough visual inspection of the wheel assembly and surrounding components, and if any abnormality is detected, cease operation until the issue is rectified by a qualified mechanic. Explanation. The control framework reveals the importance of proactive risk management in the Northwest Territories transportation sector. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing operational efficiency with the paramount duty of ensuring public safety on the roads, particularly given the unique environmental and logistical considerations of the Northwest Territories. A driver's immediate response to a potential mechanical issue directly impacts the safety of themselves, other road users, and the integrity of the vehicle. The best approach involves a driver recognizing a potential issue and immediately ceasing operation to conduct a thorough inspection, and if necessary, seek professional repair. This aligns with the fundamental principles of safe driving and vehicle maintenance mandated by the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicle Act and associated regulations. The law places a clear onus on drivers to ensure their vehicle is in a safe operating condition before and during operation. Prioritizing immediate safety by stopping and inspecting is the most direct way to prevent a minor issue from escalating into a dangerous situation, thereby upholding the ethical responsibility to protect life and property. An approach that involves continuing to drive while monitoring the situation, even if the issue seems minor, is professionally unacceptable. This fails to adhere to the proactive safety requirements of the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicle Act, which implicitly demands immediate action when a potential safety defect is identified, prioritizes convenience or perceived minor nature of the problem over the absolute necessity of ensuring vehicle integrity, creating an unacceptable risk to public safety. Another unacceptable approach is to assume the issue will resolve itself or is insignificant without any form of inspection. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential consequences of mechanical failure. It directly contravenes the driver's responsibility to operate a safe vehicle and could lead to severe accidents, violating both legal and ethical obligations. Finally, an approach that involves delaying a proper inspection until the end of the scheduled route, even if the vehicle appears to be functioning, is also professionally unsound. While the vehicle may not be exhibiting overt signs of immediate danger, the underlying issue could worsen rapidly, leading to a breakdown in a remote or hazardous location, or a sudden failure that causes an accident. This approach fails to meet the standard of immediate risk mitigation expected of all drivers in the Northwest Territories. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety above all else. This involves a systematic assessment of any observed anomaly, identify the potential risk, evaluate the immediate impact on safety, and take decisive action to mitigate that risk. In the context of vehicle operation, this means stopping and inspecting any suspected issue before continuing, rather than making assumptions or delaying necessary action. Question 19. Process analysis reveals that a driver operating a vehicle on Highway 3 in the Northwest Territories experiences a sudden onset of severe dizziness and blurred vision. What is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action for the driver to take immediately? Option A. Pull over to the side of the road, wait for the dizziness to subside, and then resume driving. Option B. Safely pull over to the side of the road as far as possible. Turn off the engine and call for emergency medical assistance. Option C. Continue driving to the nearest town, approximately 50 kilometers away, to seek medical attention upon arrival. Option D. Minimize the symptoms by focusing intently on the road and continuing the journey to their intended destination. Correct answer is B. Safely pull over to the side of the road as far as possible, turn off the engine, and call for emergency medical assistance. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to make a critical judgment call regarding their ability to operate a vehicle safely after experiencing a medical event. The driver's perception of their own fitness to drive may be impaired, and there's a conflict between the desire to reach their destination and the paramount importance of public safety. Careful judgment is required to balance personal needs with legal and ethical obligations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves prioritizing safety and adhering strictly to the legal requirements of the Northwest Territories. This means immediately ceasing operation of the vehicle and seeking appropriate medical attention. The Northwest Territories Motor Vehicles Act mandates that individuals must be medically fit to drive. Continuing to drive when experiencing symptoms that could impair driving ability is a direct violation of this principle and poses a significant risk to the driver and others. This approach aligns with the ethical duty of care inherent in operating a motor vehicle. Incorrect approaches analysis. Continuing to drive to the nearest town, even with the intention of seeking medical help upon arrival, is an unacceptable approach. This action directly contravenes the requirement to be medically fit to drive at all times while operating a vehicle. The potential for a sudden worsening of symptoms or a loss of control during the journey creates an immediate and unacceptable risk. Similarly, downplaying the symptoms and continuing the journey as planned is a severe ethical and regulatory failure. It demonstrates a disregard for personal safety and the safety of the public, and it is a clear violation of the driver's responsibility to ensure they are not impaired. Finally, pulling over to the side of the road but remaining in the vehicle without seeking immediate medical attention or arranging for safe transport is also insufficient. While it stops immediate operation, it does not address the underlying medical issue that renders the driver unfit to drive and leaves them in a potentially vulnerable or unsafe position if their condition deteriorates further. Professional reasoning. Professionals in any situation involving potential impairment, whether medical or otherwise, should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and compliance. This involves 1. Recognizing the potential risk Acknowledge any symptoms or events that could compromise safety. 2. Cease the risky activity. Immediately stop operating the vehicle. 3. Seek appropriate assistance. Contact emergency services or a medical professional. 4. Comply with regulations. Understand and adhere to all relevant laws and guidelines, such as those in the Northwest Territories Motor Vehicles Act. 5. Avoid self-assessment of fitness when impaired. Do not rely on one's own judgment when experiencing symptoms that could affect cognitive or physical abilities. Question 20. System analysis indicates a commercial driver in the Northwest Territories is planning a trip of 500 kilometers. They have provided the following information. Vehicle fuel consumption, 12 liters per 100 kilometers fuel price, $1. 85 per liter tire lifespan, 80,000 kilometers per set of tires cost per set of tires, $1. 200 estimated maintenance cost, $0. 15 per kilometer annual insurance premium, $2. 500 calculate the total operating cost for this 500 kilometer trip, assuming the insurance cost is prorated for the period of the trip. Option A, $1,000,000. Option B, $1,053.75. Option C, $950,000. Option D, $1,150,000. The correct answer is B, $1,053.75. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge involving the accurate calculation of vehicle operating costs for a commercial driver in the Northwest Territories. Drivers are responsible for understanding and accounting for various expenses, and miscalculations can lead to financial inaccuracies, potential disputes with employers or clients, and noncompliance with any applicable transportation regulations regarding expense reporting. The need for precise mathematical application within a real-world context requires careful attention to detail and a solid understanding of cost components. Correct approach analysis. The best approach involves systematically calculating each cost component based on the provided data and then summing them to arrive at the total operating cost. This method ensures all relevant expenses are considered and accurately quantified. Specifically, it requires calculating fuel cost by multiplying the distance driven by the fuel consumption rate and then by the fuel price. Tire wear is calculated by dividing the total distance by the tire lifespan and then multiplying by the cost per tire. Maintenance is calculated by multiplying the distance driven by the cost per kilometer. Finally, insurance is a fixed annual cost that needs to be prorated for the period in question. The sum of these individual calculations provides the accurate total operating cost. This systematic approach aligns with the principles of accurate record keeping and financial responsibility expected of commercial drivers under Northwest Territories transportation guidelines, which emphasize transparency and accountability in operational expenses. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to estimate the total cost by rounding up individual expenses significantly or by using a general average without considering the specific details of the trip. This fails to adhere to the requirement for precise calculation, potentially overstating costs and leading to financial misrepresentation. It lacks the rigor demanded by professional financial management and could violate principles of accurate reporting. Another incorrect approach would be to only calculate the most obvious costs, such as fuel, and neglect other significant expenses like tire wear and maintenance. This incomplete calculation would result in an inaccurate representation of the true operating cost, failing to account for all expenditures incurred. This omission is a direct failure to meet the comprehensive cost-tracking expectations for commercial operations. A further incorrect approach would be to apply a fixed percentage markup to the fuel cost to account for all other expenses. While simple, this method is arbitrary and does not reflect the actual cost structure of operating a vehicle. It ignores the specific rates for tire wear, maintenance, and insurance, leading to a highly inaccurate and unprofessional estimation of operating costs. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such calculations with a structured methodology. First, identify all relevant cost categories. Second, gather accurate data for each category e.g., distance, fuel efficiency, tire life, maintenance rates, insurance premiums. Third, apply appropriate mathematical formulas to calculate the cost for each category. Fourth, sum all individual costs to arrive at the total. Finally, review the calculation for accuracy and completeness. This systematic process ensures all factors are considered and the final figure is reliable and defensible.